Well, I was on my way home and I saw this lawnmower sitting out by the curb. One of my neighbors was throwing it away, and that 4-cycle weed eater over there. I don't know what it does or doesn't do. I don't know if it'll run or not, but it was free. So let's see if we can fire it up.
100 years ago, my great-grandfather bought a junkyard in Indiana. And ever since then, my family has been bringing things back to life. When somebody else has given up on it, when nobody thinks it will run, when it's been sitting for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and I get to turn that key and hear it fire up for the first time, I love it. It's in my family. It's in my blood. It's for 100 years we've been firing them up. Let's find some more. Let's bring them back to life.
Well, it turns over, doesn't have any knocking or clanging. It's got oil in it, has no gas in it. The deck's kind of rusty around the front. Everything is free, but I'm gonna go get some gas for it. We'll put some gas in it, see what it's doing. It might be just the carburetor's clogged, or it might run and there might be something wrong with the drive, so let's figure it out. Let's see if it'll go. See if we can fire it up. Well, that's a no-go, so let's check a couple more things. Let's check air cleaner, element, easy, spark plug, and then we'll dig into the carburetor. Air cleaner's right here. A lot of times when these don't run, it's because that's so filthy. Just mostly old. That plug is black. Well, here you can see that plug is pretty nasty. I could go buy a new one, but since we're just trying to get it running, I'm just going to clean it with starting fluid and a little bit of sandpaper, and then if it runs good, I'll go get a new one and replace it afterwards, but this way I don't have to spend any money. Rusted and nasty and covered in black oil. So we got the spark plug back on. Still have the air cleaner off. Let's see if it'll start now. I'm guessing it's probably the carburetor, but let's try it. So spark plug is clean. We got gas in it. The air cleaner's off. Shoot it with a little bit of starting fluid. If it starts off the starting fluid but won't start on its own, the carburetor needs to be cleaned. It's probably gonna start. So it starts off the starting fluid and then it dies. So that's definitely a carburetor problem. We know we got fuel, and so we just got to take that carburetor off, and usually I'll clean it out with carburetor cleaner, and a lot of times just the float is stuck, so sometimes it's pretty easy. Just unstick that float and we're good to go if it's been sitting for a while. So let's do it. Just 2 bolts here on this cover. So here's the carburetor. This is the bowl, floats inside of there. That's what usually gets stuck. There's a bolt right underneath here that I can take off, and then I can actually just take the bowl off and see if the float's stuck on it without cleaning the rest of it out. That's what's wrong with them a lot of times. So let's do it. And this bolt will come off. It's usually a little stuck. You see all the buildup in there. And that float now dropped. The float's got a bunch of crap all over it too. So we will blow that out, and I bet you it will run. If you see the float's completely dry, I mean the bowl's completely dry, and so even though there's gas in this thing, it is not coming through that carburetor. Right now the float is open, so there should be gas running out. So there's a problem there. So needle and seat's right there. Whoop. Right there. So I'll go ahead and pull the needle and seat while I got it too, because I know there's no gas coming through it. Once we get gas flowing right there, we'll take that out, we'll clean it, put that back in. Gas should flow as soon as I pull that out, and then we should be good to go. This thing's gonna run. Let's fire it up. All right, so to take needle and seat out, you got the little pin right here that holds the float in. Remove the pin. The needle's also gonna drop you gotta be careful about that. Okay, there's the needle, there's the float, there's the pin. Don't want to lose any of that stuff. This is interesting, we still don't have any gas. That's actually what holds the gas from coming into the carburetor from that line right there, which is just a straight line from the tank. So what we need to do next is blow up through there. I might take that line off and make sure we got gas there, but we should, because we just put gas in it. And then once we figure out why there's no gas, we put it all back together and this thing's gonna run. All right, so we got the needle out, we got the float out, we still got no gas. So I got some torch tip cleaners. People will argue with you about whether or not you should use these on carburetors, but this is a free garbage lawnmower, so I'm not super worried about changing the size of any of the ports. All I'm gonna do is just run this up through there and see if there's a blockage, because the gas would have stayed in this line when they parked this thing, and so if there's any buildup, it's usually gonna hang out right there at the lowest point, so there might just be some buildup in there. So let's poke through it and see if we get any gas coming out. Poking through it some more, and now you can see we got a little bit of gas flowing. It's gonna clean itself out here in a minute, because gas is a solvent, so as soon as it can flow, it will flush some of it out. Yep, and there we got it. There's our gas. All right, so let's tip it back up, let's put it back together, and it's gonna run. We're gonna fire this thing up, man. All right, so I cleaned the needle, and here's the float, and we're just gonna put it back together. We're gonna fire this thing up, man. I might mow the yard with it. Let's see. Actually, I'll probably just fix some of the rust. It just has some rust from where water was sitting up top, so just sand some of that off and paint it and probably sell it, make a little bit of money on it. 30 minutes of work, 50 bucks. Can't beat that, man. $100 an hour? Who needs college? No, you need college. Go to college, but do this while you're in college. Then you don't have to work at Pizza Hut. Got literally the world's largest brush for the smallest part, but my other brushes are inside. And since we're trying to do this in 30 minutes or less, this is what I got. Carburetor cleaner. They can add that to the list of things on here. Wire scratch is what it's called. I've still got the label on it. Just a basic old engine. No overhead valves to worry about or any of that stuff. I don't know, how old do you think this design is? It's probably at least 50 to 75 years old, I'd say. They've been making them this way for a long time. One time my grandfather, when he passed away, he had 20 mowers behind his garage. And as part of his estate sale, they were cleaning things out, you know, selling everything. I was doing this because most of the mowers didn't run for this exact reason. I was doing this while they were having the estate sale, and every time I'd fix one, somebody else would want to buy one. And so we were just moving mowers that day, throughout the whole day, maybe every 30 minutes selling one that had been cleaned out and was running good again. Clean this plug out before I put it back in. Just got some gunk, some nasty. I bolt back on here, we got the bowl back on, and this back up. We didn't clean any passages on the inside yet. This is just a test to see if it will run, because it just didn't have any fuel. And really the passages on the inside might not be clogged because it doesn't have any fuel sitting in there. Let's see if it'll start. Alright, so we still got nothing. That one's flowing free. Don't put gas in your mouth. I drank it once, almost killed me. Don't do it. So I got it up here at the workbench. I think some of these passages are clogged because we're definitely not getting fuel all the way through it. So we'll spray it with some carb cleaner, and I'll run the torch tip cleaner through some of these small passages that you see. This one. And then up from the bottom, we'll see if we can get it all cleaned out. We'll also blow it out with some compressed air. So I got the carburetor here, just cleaning it out a little bit. There's not too many passages in here. So you got a couple passages here, and then you can also clean them from the front there. And then once we get all that cleaned out, we will throw it back on, and this thing should run, hopefully. We know we got spark, turns over good. No big clunking. Sometimes you'll get them, and if it breaks a rod or something, they're just like bop, 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 bop. So we got none of that going on, and it runs off starting fluid. So as long as we can get fuel into that engine, it's gonna run. So get it together. Let's fire it up. Here we go. So I got those cleaned out, and I've been blowing them out with compressed air. So cleaning them with the torch tip cleaner, and then I got just a basketball needle, which is open on the front, and my little mini air compressor here, just so this gives me the ability to blow into these little tiny passages and make sure that they're clear in there. So I think that's just about done. We're gonna put it back together, and then we'll put it back on here and fire it up, man. So if you want to see how all this goes together, now we got it off anyways. So there's the needle, the seat's inside of there, and so the needle just goes in like this, and then the float, the needle's hooked on the float. And then you got that little roll pin, and then when that goes up and down, you can see it just lowers the needle. Actually, it goes like this. So gravity wants to pull it down, but then when enough gas comes in, it holds the float up, and that closes the needle, shuts off the fuel. When it's down, the needle is down, which means that opening is open, and fuel can run down into the bowl, and then from the bowl it gets brought up into the carburetor. Put the bowl back on, and then this bottom bolt has a passage through it, so I blew the passageways out and everything. Get all that put together, throw it back on here, and I think now it's gonna run. But I already said that a couple times, so we'll see. Alright, so this spring needs to come up at the top. Another thing you can do if you don't want to do all this work is you can actually just buy the carburetor on eBay or Amazon or something for pretty cheap. But I actually don't love doing that, because last time I bought one, that carb was such a piece of junk I ended up rebuilding my original one anyways. 1/4-inch one up here I'm doing right now. And then we had 2 springs, that throttle linkage, gas line up. It's gonna be leaking as soon as I pull a bolt out. Move the little clip up. All right, and everything's back together except for the covers and stuff. So let's see if it runs. It's got gas in it. We know it's got spark. With those passages clean, there's not really anything that should be keeping it from running. So let's see if we can fire it up. There we go, runs good. So now we got to see if the transmission is any good, if it'll drive. So I don't want to drive it through the grass and mow or anything without the air cleaner on it, because it'll just be sucking all that dirt and grass into the carburetor. So I'll put all this back together, and then we will see if it will mow the yard. All right, let's see if it'll mow the yard. Well, there you go. 30 minutes to an hour, you find a lawnmower, you get it back together, get it going, and you can go out and mow the lawn, or you can sell it, or whatever you want to do. But these mowers are always out here, at least in my neighborhood, man, sitting around doing nothing. People throwing them away, so it's cool to put them back together, get them back on the road, on the grass, I guess. So you might be asking, why are we doing this on a car channel? Well, because this is where you learn about the basics of any kind of machine, and then you take it and you apply it up to whatever you're working on. So it's a good place to start if you're just learning. See ya. I'm glad you were here. Let's keep firing them up. If you like it, subscribe, and like this video. We'll keep seeing what we can get started, get going, fire it up.